Please share your thoughts in comments and like this video. The story is about Albert, who was sent away because his skills are not fully developed. He goes off to fight monsters, and he ends up gaining more strength and skills and becomes very powerful and popular. The scene opens with awe as he successfully destroys over 100,000 enemies, including the dragon, which makes the hero and the Grand Mage very shocked and awed. They are still determining if it is the same person who could not explore his skill that can destroy the enemy monsters and thousands of enemies. He finishes the quest and comes out of it completely unharmed. People who had known him found it hard to believe he was Albert Giesel, the divine swordsman. Backtrack back to the past. Albert was fired by the guildmaster Simon. His job, the divine swordsman, is supposed to awaken sooner or later, so the guildmaster let him join a guild, but there was still no result. He remembers how the guildmaster had accused him of wasting away his time by doing general chores, which is a job meant to be done by another employee. But in actual reality, the master is the one who made him do all the chores and stole all the training time. As he makes his way, he cannot help but remember all the hurtful words he had said to him, how he had asked him what the divine swordsman is that he could not name drop it. He feels hurt hearing it as he in actual reality also wants to know it, but was not given the chance to learn it since almost everyone knew it as normal people were given one of them. For some reason, he was given the job of a divine swordsman, however. Just being rare does not make it strong. In a nutshell, he was driven out and he had to face his reality. He wanders till he gets to the countryside on the outskirts of the Mervyn town, and not knowing what to do, he decides to start hunting monsters and earn some daily money since he has no more money and nowhere to go. Just then, as he goes on, he encounters a slime, and then he realizes the fact that he has never fought monsters before. The slime comes at him and he tries hard to defend himself against it with his sword. As he does this, others come at him as well. As he manages to defeat them, he realizes the fact that, by defeating the enemy, his attack power is increasing, and that is a lot. The more he manages to defeat them, his performance and ability increase, and he can automatically recover the acquired attacked object, as well as move the object in and out of place. He finally sees and understands the use of the divine sword, and why it is called the divine sword. After his experience, he takes the slime fluid to a shop, where the seller in that shop confesses to the fact that he had never seen a slime fluid in such good condition, and in such number like that. He offers to buy it for 3,000 zel. The seller, confirming he's Albert, hears about Mr. Golgo from the buyer. Annoyed, Albert takes 3,000 zel and leaves, upset about rumors ruining his life. He goes to an inn, recalling how Mr. Golgo took his home, his family died, and he got kicked out of the guild. Now living is tough. The next day, he goes out again to see what he can do. He looks through his map for the closest town to the one he presently is, and he decides to go to Roland, which is the northeast, since he has not heard much good about it. But it is better than the town he is presently, where they do not rate him. As he goes on, he thinks about his parents who were dead, and just then, he sees himself surrounded by goblins, just about 2 hours since he left his hometown. At that point, there was no running away, so he used the swordsmanship he had just acquired, and surprisingly, he defeated them all easily. At that point, he'd exceeded a total of 10 statuses, and he became eligible to choose his weapon mode and set the power balance. A goblin attacks unknowingly, and he uses the defense mode to defeat it, making it a total of 5 psi and 1 goblin bone. He gets to Roland. Though he had heard of it, he never expected it to be that bad. A group of 3 guys called out to ask him if he had any money, and he told them it was for his meal. Seeing that he would not be able to win against them, he thinks he should run away, but they would not let him, and then a young lady walks in and asks them to stop. She threatens to stop giving them alcohol, which makes them leave him. He is very grateful and goes on to thank her while she asks him if he is from the town. He tells her that he is from the town of Mervyn, and she asks him why he was in a town like that. He told her a lot had happened, and also asked her if he could see a place to stay. She offered him their warehouse through not too okay, but manageable to sleep in. He asked for her name, which she told him was Petra, and he commented on her name as being cute like her face, while she tells him to come to her if he needs anything. She leaves the warehouse, and he goes ahead to sleep, as he is tired of sleeping. At Mervyn's Adventurers Guild, Mr. Golgo talks to a strange man with cigarettes. He tells the man that Albert is finally out of the guild as planned. The man is pleased, saying Albert was a troublesome kid. They discuss how Albert's popularity in the guild was a problem. The man mentions complaints about Albert's dismissal and wonders if he's still in town. Mr. Golgo assures him that Albert left that morning, according to his subordinate. The next morning, Albert, eating in the warehouse, is surprised to find out it's not just a warehouse, but also a guild. He thought it was a bar because of a sake barrel. The woman there clarifies that it's both a bar and a business, but the guild isn't doing well. When Albert asks where to sell his materials, she says there's no place since people lack decent jobs. The bar might close, she adds, because customers owe money, and the north side of town has trouble with bad guys. Albert surprises her by asking to be her adventurer. She's shocked because it's not an ideal place. He admits he has nowhere else to go and needs money. Giving her his guild card, she looks through it. Before she can comment, Albert predicts she thinks he's weak due to the card. He acknowledges his only skill is cooking. She agrees, but asks one thing: he must ensure he doesn't die and be careful. He heads to the field and fights goblins. Curious about the growth acceleration effect, he notices they killed fewer than the day before, but the goblin numbers are still increasing rapidly. Worried, he decides to learn the archer's job to handle the situation. Switching to bow mode, he uses a bit of FP and shoots a light arrow. This should help them deal with stronger enemies more easily. He returns to town, and Pratra is shocked he survived. Showing her the greenleaf delivery, she says he delivered too much. She asks if the payment could wait, as she needs to deliver it to headquarters first. He agrees. Albert then asks if the cost of that day's meals could be taken from the money since he doesn't have any. She agrees to that too. Back in his room, he checks his stats and finds out his support is knowledge and his skill is alchemy. He's thrilled to know without studying. His dream is to max out his alchemy level with knowledge from other worlds. Suddenly, he unlocks a new skill: otherworld knowledge. The next day, Albert wonders how many people work at the guild. He asks Petra, who explains he's the only one because others prefer drinking and fighting. Albert thinks they could hunt monsters if they have the strength. He, also known as Al, notices a poster offering 2,000 zels for iron ore delivery. He tells Petra he'll do it. She's confused, asking if he's still going to work. She mentions scary monster rumors in Spire Eye Cave, and he assures her there's no problem. In the Spire Cave, Albert encounters monsters and starts running, feeling uneasy. As he goes, he realizes he can't go farther, and the monsters are closing in. Finally reaching a river, he's relieved, thinking he'll be safe. Suddenly, a fish tries to attack him, and the monsters are still chasing. Cornered, Albert fights the monsters with his sword, surprised because, based on his knowledge, it's not supposed to be a place with many monsters. Suddenly, a winged vampire notices Albert. Using his knowledge, Albert can see the monsters and realizes the vampire understands human language. The vampire mocks him, calling him weak and a loser. Albert asks to be let go, but the monster attacks instead. Just as the monster is about to devour him, Albert shoots it with a gun. He mentions it was a close call and is glad the monster let its guard down. Examining the gun, he finds it powerful and unlike any weapon he's seen before. Grateful for the knowledge gained the previous night, he discovers a new skill: Gunner. He plans to unlock human mode since Blutaya's total status has exceeded 1,500. In human mode, like a video game from another world, there are random faces, hair shapes, and cute outfits like maid uniforms with optional cat ears. Albert finishes selecting the human mode, and before him stands a naked young lady. Soon, she's clothed and introduces herself as Blutaya's human mode. Grateful for gaining an ego, she asks what he wants and how she can help him. He asks if he can call her Tia, and she agrees, registering her name as Tia. Albert then inquires about what she can do, and she mentions being able to do the same things as a human. When he asks if she can fight as strongly as a blue tear, she says yes, but there's a catch. Blue tear and Tia have different abilities, except for a few similarities. Tia's current status is not much different from that of a human girl. The situation seems like it could be better for Albert. If only her FB were high and support could be used, it would be better. Wanting Tia to benefit too, he asks if there's anything she desires. She replies that her wish is to please him, so working for him would be enough. Seeing her as a model maid, Albert asks about her job aptitude. Tia explains she doesn't have the concept of a job, she can fight as ordered. Albert thinks it over, considering having Tia fight with a katana, a weapon from another world. He explains that he'll do some manipulation, but she won't need to take any action. If he tells her to generate weapons, she should comply. Albert instructs her to retrieve the iron ore from storage, and she agrees. Tia mentions that learning appraisal is convenient, so he decides to leave it to her. She asks about the skill level, and Albert suggests setting it at 10 since he plans to use 30 spet. Albert urges Tia to start their plans as soon as possible. He also informs her about an assignment for the next day, subjugating monsters outside the town. Tia agrees, saying it's his wish. The following day, Petra sees them, greets them, and asks about Tia. Albert explains that she is the sword he had been carrying until the previous day, leaving Petra confused. She wonders if he's teasing her. To prove it, Albert asks Tia to transform back into a sword, and this leaves her in shock. Petra finds the idea of a divine sword user strange and questions why Albert bothered explaining things to her instead of fooling her. Albert shares that he wants her to know because he sees her as a potential partner. The word partner shocks Petra, and she insists he's jumping to conclusions, stating that such things start with friends. Albert, surprised, clarifies that he meant a work partner. Petra, understanding, is asked to think about it. Tia informs Albert that she needs to go out and hunt monsters soon, and he tells her he's counting on her. Before she leaves, Albert asks if there's anything he can do if someone attacks him while she's gone. Tia suggests a form of communication and assures him he can call her, as she can come running instantly. Once she leaves, Albert and Petra continue on their way. Petra comments on not understanding the whole human transformation, finding it amazing. Albert agrees, but mentions that it's not convenient, feeling it's like cheating. Petra tells Albert that she needs to ask Luca to watch the store while they deliver the materials from Albert. Albert asks who Luca is, and Petra explains she's her younger sister. Luca offers to go with them, but Petra declines. A guy approaches, questioning the presence of the strange guy. Petra introduces Albert as their adventurer. The guy introduces his bodyguard, Bolan, claiming he's the strongest person in town. Petra adds that, despite appearances, Bolan is a good person. As she says this, Bolan warns her to watch her steps to avoid getting hurt. In her carriage, Albert watches the video and sees the royal capital Raynark, the guild headquarters. They're happy to arrive when Theron, Merfingild's strong staff member in charge of administration, notices them. He wonders if it's all he's seeing and asks about Al quitting, questioning if Simon played a role. Al explains he had been in Roland, a town full of thugs. Theron advises him to go to the capital for business, since Golgo is in Mervyn. He also inquires if Roland has job opportunities. Albert considers Theron's suggestion, and Theron advises him to visit the town occasionally to reassure everyone. Theron also mentions informing Emilia about it and bids him goodbye. Petra asks about Emilia, but Albert stays silent. At the guild, the attendant apologizes for the wait and gives Albert his rightful pay. Petra is pleased, as it will help keep the store from closing. She thanks him for his hard work and suggests going home to avoid the sun setting if they take a detour. During that time, a massive monster known as a horde of devil grizzlies descends on them, ready to attack. The people are surprised, noting that such invasions have become more frequent. Someone suggests that monsters only stop when there aren't enough people around. Another expresses fear, believing it could be the end of everything. Albert is also surprised, but the guard with them vows to defeat the monsters. Albert tries to convince him that even if he's the strongest in town, the approaching enemy might be stronger. However, the guard is undeterred, claiming it doesn't matter how strong the enemy is, but Albert insists that it does matter. Challenging an opponent you can't defeat is not wise. One must recognize their limits. Albert's caution angers the guard, who insists it doesn't matter who the opponent is. He'll take them all down. Albert, unwilling to change the guard's mind, decides to go along. He calls out to Tia, who arrives to the guard's surprise. Tia suggests they move quickly to face the enemies outside. Albert seized the opportunity to confirm if she was in the midst of another fight when he had called her. Tia explains that her top priority is her master, no matter the situation. Albert, examining Bolan's stats, suggests he wait at the guild since someone is needed to protect Petra, and he's the best fit for the job. Bolan agrees. Observing the devil grizzlies, Tia notes their danger level is similar to the vampire's C rank, but their strength differs. The estimated number is around 300. Analyzing the situation, she concludes that her master has a low chance of winning due to the overwhelming odds. Albert asks Tia about his chances of winning, and she explains it's roughly about 1% since the monsters are too strong. The soldiers, caught by the monsters, receive encouragement from their captain, who tries to instill confidence, but he is soon killed. Albert calls out to Tia, recalling her earlier statement about the 1% probability if he were to do it then and there. He asks if there's any way for him to beat them, to which she agrees. The solution is to enhance his abilities, specifically maxing out his physical enhancement support skill and sword skill. If he can achieve that, the odds of beating the Devil Grizzlies are high. Albert strikes using the Sonic Strike. Using the Sonic Strike doesn't seem to work, surprising Albert as the monster fights back. Undeterred, he tries again with consecutive blows. Onlookers, including high-rank adventurers, are surprised by his actions. One soldier, unaware of who they are, encourages Albert to keep fighting, and they join in against the smaller bears. Albert, looking around, calls out to Tia, thinking they've taken down many. He asks her how many more they need to defeat. She analyzes and realizes there are 29 remaining. Observing the situation, Albert realizes the current strategy won't lead them to victory. He tells Tia that he wants to wipe out the entire enemy. Understanding his intention, he activates the maximum level mode staff while utilizing fire arts. Flames rain down, surprising everyone. After the attack, he asks Tia how many are left, and she confirms that 0 remains. All Devil Grizzlies have been eradicated. Analyzing the progress, Albert realizes that the threat is indeed over. Everyone at the scene points to Albert, amazed by his abilities. Some ask him to join their guild, while others suggest he be knighted. Albert approaches a man and asks if there is any special reward for what he has done. The man says they would need to inform the king and asks about Albert's guild. Albert reveals he is an adventurer from Roland, leaving the man in shock. One of the men comments that Roland is full of thugs, and they find it hard to believe that someone as skilled as Albert could be from there. Despite their skepticism, Albert insists that he is indeed from Roland. After everything, they return, and Albert comments on how it was a hectic day. Tired, he suggests finding an inn to rest. Petra agrees, but mentions the cost of the inn, adding that she has some extra income. Balan declines to join them, and Albert tries to convince him by asking where he is going. When Balan questions if it's a camping trip, Albert explains and offers to cover some expenses for Bolan as well. Tia, understanding him, creates a spatial movement, transporting them to a building. They are surprised when Albert, using some magical movement, transports them in front of their house in Roland. Petra is intensely joyful and surprised that he can do such a thing. She happily calls out to her sister Luca, letting her know they are home, and introduces Albert to her. Albert expresses how nice it is to meet Luca, who reciprocates the greetings. Albert asks if he could borrow the kitchen, and they allow him to. In the kitchen, he thanks Tia for her hard work, saying it's one of the reasons why he could get through the day. Tia refuses his thanks, stating that as the master's sword, it's only natural for her to do all she has done. Albert asks Tia if she can eat, and she is initially surprised by the question. She confirms that she can eat, but doesn't need any special nutrition. Albert explains that he wants to cook for her as a thank you for the day. He mentions needing something from another world for the recipe and expresses the wish to purchase it. Tia asks if he needs something specific or if he would like to shop for it from another world. They open up to the world of shopping, selecting goods to wait for their arrival after making their choices. In a few minutes, the goods had already arrived in the storage, surprising Albert. He wondered how it worked, and Tia informed him that it was a trade secret. After finishing the food, Petra asked if it was done, and Albert confirmed it. He explained that it was a dish from a faraway country called bear meat sukiyaki, served as a reward to Tia for her hard work and dedication. Tia is delighted, takes a bite, and can't contain her joy due to the delicious taste of the food. By dipping the meat with a strong, sweet, spicy flavor into the egg, it transforms into something mild and easy to eat, spreading happiness through Tia's mouth. The rice complements it well. Later, she realizes it is too hot and cries out to Albert, but the taste is still different from the meat. Albert explains that it's food from another world. Tia can't contain her joy for its unique taste. Seeing her reaction, she apologizes to her master for being a little too excited, but Albert expresses his happiness that she enjoyed the meal. He adds that he has discovered an unexpected side of her, and it reassures him that his choices are not bad. Back in the guild in Murfin, the man who spoke with Mr. Golgo about Albert sits in his office again. He mentions that Albert must have moved to Roland as one of his staff had encountered him in Reynark. He tells Mr. Golgo that if anything happens, he should make sure to report to him every time. The man thinks to himself that as long as he's on good terms with Golgo, he will be rich for the rest of his life. Suddenly, someone forcefully pushes the door open, breaking it. The person is Emilia, and she calls out to Simon, expressing that she heard about making Albert quit and questions him on the matter. Simon is surprised to see Emilia and asks if she has already come back. He expresses that he's not going to get stronger anyway. Emilia questions if he is blind and if he has any idea how much work Albert is doing. Simon tries to calm her down, explaining that he only fired Albert and nothing more. Emilia accuses him of touching a woman staff member's ass and harassing other staff members. Simon is surprised by how she found out and admits that he had put everyone's and his anger into the decision. Emilia doesn't stay to listen to all he has to say. She delivers a hot punch to his face, sending him flying through the window. Theron walks in asking what the fuss is all about, and she informs him that she is leaving the guild. She recalls walking into the guild with Albert a year ago, telling the guildmaster that Albert would one day awaken and become stronger than expected. That's why she had chosen to leave him in that guild. Theron immediately understands that she wants to leave the guild because of Albert. Back in Roland, Albert, still feeling sleepy, touches something soft. As he tries to figure it out, he hears Tia calling out to him. He realizes he had been touching her boobs all along and is surprised. Tia tells him it's troubling, adding that even swords sleep sometimes. Later that morning, they sit at the dining table to eat. Petra comments that the sukiyaki they ate was delicious, and Tia agrees, saying the food was indeed delicious. Petra asks if they can eat it again, and Albert agrees. Tia bids them farewell as she wants to go and hunt monsters. Petra asks Albert if he is leaving too, and he tells her he is just going for a walk. As Albert takes his walk north of Roland, he sees homeless people huddled along the road with a little child crying because of hunger. He also encounters some drunk thugs. He knew it was coming, but once again, it was a mess, contrasting with a better situation on the south side with Petra. The thugs call out to him, demanding to know who permitted him to walk away from there. Initially, there are 2 men, but their numbers increase. One of them states that Albert needs permission from Master Gayo to walk around there and insists that he should pay them money if he wants that permission. Albert informs them that he has no money at the moment. The thugs respond that there's nothing they can do, then and suggest letting him die by sending a monster his way. The monster throws a punch at his chin, but Albert claims it doesn't hurt. He demonstrates what a painful punch is by sending the monster flying. Albert benefits from remote connection body strengthening. Even if he is away from Tia, it is a new skill released in the battle against the Grizzlies. Others around are shocked to see how Albert defeated a monster, and they begin to question if he is a monster himself. Albert approaches the boss and asks if he is the leader. Instead, they all bow to him, declaring that from that day forward, he is their general, expressing their eagerness to work with him. Albert takes them to where he lives, and when Petra sees them, she welcomes him. She asks who they are, and he tells her it's a long story. A soldier from Reynark had been waiting for Albert. Petra informs him that they are there to ask for some work. Albert and the soldier sit down, and the soldier explains that the northeast of Reynark, Haliza Labyrinth, is infested by dangerous B-class monsters that appear suddenly. Looking at the situation, not even mid-level or higher adventurers can do anything about, and that puts the possibility of the capital being in danger in the future. He asks them if they want him to defeat the monster, to which the soldier says yes, and promises a reward for it. He agrees to the offer, and the soldier tells him he owes him one. He does his long-distance communication with Tia, who tells him she has learned a new mode that he could use to cook delicious meals. Albert, on the other hand, tells her his plan of going to exterminate the B-class monsters in the Haliza Labyrinth. She understands and asks them to get started while they tell the soldier they need his help with location. They ask for a map and they can see it is a fair distance from there to Labyrinth. He asks Tia about her new mode, and so she uses it to provide a motorcycle. This process leaves the soldiers shocked, but then they are at the entrance of the Haliza Labyrinth. They got in and met the other soldiers, who confirmed that he was Albert, and proceeded to tell him the location of the monsters. The soldier asks them to be careful since the noise of the B-class has created more monsters just then, skeleton monsters, and that like a bear attack him, but Tia helps destroy them. She asks how he is, and he comments on her strength, asking her what her strength is. She tells him, and he commends on her fast growth level. Tatting her like that makes her lose concentration, and she asks him to save it for later, while the guards tell them it takes about an hour to get to the altar, and Albert tells her they should not let their guards down. They got to the altar, but found no monsters, and suddenly, a big dragon monster red hydra of level 8 came up. There before them is the red hydra dragon, and Tia has less than 11% of defeating, thus making it impossible to do, and the other soldiers try to find out if they can do it. He lets them know that he is not the one fighting the dragon alone. He tells her to get into the tear sword mode, which she did, and leaves them all shocked, while she calls out to him to watch his step due to the dragon poison, which could paralyze one. As they battled on, he complained about having to fight 3 heads and wished he had Tia there, not as a sword, but as a power to fight alongside him, making it 3 against 2. She tells him it is possible, and he asks for 35 attack power, with 30 defenses and a lot of support. But then, the dragon sends the fireball again, and he tries to lock it, and he manages to remove one of the dragon's heads, and left with 2 but discovers poison on his leg. He asks for a solution, which is to learn the status of abnormal resistance, but then again, the dragon sends another fireball. He does this, but they all realize it will not work for long, and he asks her to learn and follow up on the maximum number of water arts she can learn. Maybe they could win. He jumps and attacks the remaining 2 heads, and thus, he defeats the dragon. After everything, he tells Tia he could have used spatial motion, and she tells him the more enemies he defeats, the stronger he becomes. The other soldiers appreciate him for his work and for saving the capital, and he tells her they should head back. But suddenly, he sees the town of Roland, and he exclaims, "Please like and subscribe."